All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. We are going to be doing a little bit of something different tonight, as you probably surmised by the title of the stream. So we're going to get into that just in a minute here. But before we do, I want to really quickly just thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Lazaran, who's the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon. I would also like to thank our partners here who are the next tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships, as well as all of our supporters who are a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for being here. And speaking of thank you, I would like to thank all the viewers, whether you're joining us here live on the YouTube side or the Twitch side, or you're catching the VOD after the fact. Thank you guys very much for being here. Without you guys, this project would not exist, and so I appreciate each and every one of you guys. All right, Nicolo's over there on the YouTube side. Hello. 5:44 a.m. over there in Georgia. That is quite early in the morning. But yeah, I guess considering where you are in the world, that makes sense. Welcome, by the way. Spiro, good to see you first over there on over there on the Twitch side. You did actually get first this time. Congrats. Tammin, great to see you as well. How are you doing? All right. So, as you can probably tell by what we have here on the screen, I want to talk about something different, and I want to talk about making a bit of a pivot on what we're going to do. So I've been doing a lot of thinking offline, a lot of research, a lot of sort of soul searching, if you will, in terms of the current project. And frankly, I'm not 100% sold on any of the variations of the project that I've come up with. Any of the ideas, I don't really like them as much as I thought I did. And so I think we ought to pivot on that now, versus keeping down that direction. There's a couple of reasons for that. First off, what I actually have in mind is going to require some fairly advanced physics that we don't have yet. Yes, we could fix that with a library, but that's not the only issue. So one of the things is having done some pretty extensive market research over the last week, and a little bit before that, I started seeing signs that vehicular combat games just are not all that popular on the market right now. And it looks like that's been a trend for a little while, and it seems to just be not a very popular thing, especially like weaponized vehicular combat like what we were planning. They just don't sell that well, and the ones that that do even sell decently aren't all that great or widespread, right? I also tripped over a project that I was unaware of called Fumes that looks a lot like what I had in mind, right? So I'm just going to kind of leave the video playing here without the sound on. This, unfortunately, is very, very similar to what I had in mind, and somebody's already making it, right? So obviously the art style is a little bit different, but a lot of what you're seeing here on the screen was pretty much what I had in mind in terms of what I wanted to actually make. So I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to shelf this idea. I'm not going to completely throw it out. Because I might be able to work ideas from it into a future project. So I'm going to keep all the work, all the design decisions we've made, and I'm going to keep all that stuff, and I'm just going to shelf it for now, and we're going to move on to something a little bit different. Because, frankly, the idea just doesn't interest me as much, right? And so I actually kind of want to go in a completely different direction. Which is more towards the game that I've always kind of wanted to make from the beginning. And I think that also fits a little bit better with the capabilities that the engine has, minus one caveat that we'll have to go over. And that is basically like a top-down 3D isometric action RPG, maybe with some base building elements. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I do like the idea still of the art style, keeping it sort of cartoony slash hand drawn style like Borderlands, right? I still do like that idea. But I wanted to go with something a little bit sort of slower paced, less dependent on physics, because I eventually may want to incorporate some sort of online mechanic, maybe down the road, where you can like visit each other's bases or something like that. But the core idea is basically a top-down 3D isometric action RPG that has lots of exploration, lots of hand-to-hand and melee magic combat, things like that. And that is that's kind of the direction I'm thinking of going. And one inspiration I have for that I can just list is Lens Island, right? And if you've not played this, it's a fantastic game. Why did that scroll like that? If you haven't played this, it's a fantastic game. Obviously, it's got pretty positive reviews, but it's this is kind of the perspective that I'm thinking about when I'm talking about a isometric type of RPG, right? It's got slower paced things, faster paced things, magical spells, casting, things like that, combat against multiple enemies, things of that nature, right? And so if we think about some of the gameplay elements that are kind of in this realm, obviously we'll have our own stuff that we'll come up with, but just to kind of give you guys a visual of what I was kind of thinking, this is what I have in mind. It's not going to be Diablo, that's for sure. I don't want to go that dark with it, right? I want to keep it somewhat light. It will have dark areas, but the whole thing is not going to be dark, right? But yeah, I mean, Diablo could be another example of what I'm talking about too, right? Let me catch up on chat. Speaking of that, nice to be here early. Welcome, Lazy Man. Isometric, nice. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? I think this will lend itself a lot better to what we already have in the engine. Minus one caveat that I haven't gotten to yet, but we'll tackle that, right? The thing about this is it doesn't need any crazy physics. Actually, the physics that I've put in place will be enough. We could use the very, very simple physics system I have in place, and that will be totally fine for this. And so, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kind of talk about a little bit of design, and we're going to come up with the idea. I've got just a couple of notes here, but I didn't want to really proceed any further with this because I kind of wanted to design it along with you guys and kind of get that in as a bit of an exercise, right? So we're gonna go over that tonight. We're not really gonna do too much coding. We're gonna think about more design, right? Let's see. Taman coming back from programming is nice, but man, do I feel stupid. That's fair enough. Yeah, I get that. Soul Foam, how's it going? Here but lurking as usual. I appreciate that, Soul Foam. Good to see you. How have you been, by the way? I'm in the middle of making something like that, and oh boy, icons are a problem. Most items are just icons, so beware. Yes, and I actually have thought about that. I've thought about that for a lot of games, like when you look at World of Warcraft, how many icons are in that game, right? And so that part of it doesn't really scare me, right? Because like developing the systems behind that stuff is actually going to be the more challenging part, I think. In terms of coming up with the art for icons, I'm not really actually too worried about that. We'll just kind of progress that as we go. Always shortcuts for that kind of thing too. Icons can be the meshes themselves, exactly. Which could be nice too, because there's ways that we can get around that, right? I've always kind of liked something they used to do in older games when 3D was first starting to come around, is like to show off. Studios used to actually show the items spinning in 3D, right? And I feel like a lot of games don't do that nowadays. So like maybe as you're going through your inventory, however we happen to set that up. Maybe we can have the actual items themselves, instead of just being an icon, maybe they could be 3D. What happened to the racing game? We're shelving it for now. And my reasons for that are basically the physics system needs to be a lot more robust to make it work the way that I wanted. And also, the larger reasons for that are I wasn't really loving the idea and how it was coming together. It wasn't really what I want to make right now. It's kind of been something that I've been mulling around in my head for a little bit, but I did a lot of market research. Vehicular combat games just don't sell all that well, frankly. That and this game here, Fumes, pretty much already did most of the stuff I was already thinking about doing. So what I'm doing is I'm not throwing the idea out, I'm shelving it for now. And that's just because I want to, if I come back to this, I might take ideas out of it and make it as like a mini game and inside of another game, or maybe something different completely. Maybe I'll be able to take ideas out of it and use it for another game. But as it stands, I don't think it's going to be something that we can stick with, right? And so what we're going to shoot for is like a top-down 3D isometric game. And the reason for that is because it fits what the engine can do. It's what I had in mind when I was actually making the engine to begin with, was making a game somewhat like that. And there's really only one thing that we need to add to it. So I've mentioned that a couple of times, so we should probably start talking about it. So what features do we need, right? So we can just kind of start talking about this. Let's do, I guess, heading 3 for that. And a bullet point list. Why is that bullet so huge? That's ridiculous. Okay. Sure. I guess we'll just number it then. All right, so features needed for this. The very first thing we're going to need is an animation system. Specifically, animated meshes, right? So we are going to have to figure that out. That's something I was going to have to figure out for the other game anyways, so regardless, we have to build that out. I think we can prototype gameplay without it, but we are going to need it before we get too far. We definitely need that. I don't think that's going to be all that complex. We're going to try and keep it as simple as possible. One thing, again, to support the sort of art style that I wanted. In fact, let me pull up the other document real quick, because I can actually rip out some screenshots that we had for that. Mostly what I wanted was like, this is the style. In fact, I'm just going to put it down here. We want to go for that sort of visual style, right? So we can just say art style. I still kind of want to go down the Borderlands route. Probably not this high definition though. And I want to go a little bit less Unreal material feel, and a little bit more cartoony with it. So there's definitely some difference there. And so we'll flesh that out a little bit better as well. And obviously it's not going to be in the first person perspective. So the models and the details of the surfaces don't have to be quite that high detail either. Particle system is another one. Yeah. So, in fact, we're going to put particle system because we do need that. But before that, we actually need billboards, which particle systems build off of, right? Billboards are pretty simple, right? All it is just a quad that exists in the world that constantly faces the camera. So I'm not really too worried about that. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Apotham, good to see you. Borderlands, yep. You mentioned particle system over here as well. Yep. Yeah, definitely have to have a particle system. Again, I think we can probably prototype some stuff without it, but we'll need that before we go on too far. So I'm going to I think I'm going to put these in here as far as like, I'm going to order them by priority, right? The next thing that we need is we need a outline effect, right? And this is a little bit lower priority, right? Certainly lower priority than some of the other things. But we're basically going to do a depth normal check. I guess we could say technique. We're going to use the depth normal technique because there's a few ways to achieve this outline effect. And by outline effect, I mean, if you look at this, you can see that there's black outlines around the meshes, right? And we kind of want that look as well. So we're going to need to implement that. There's a few ways to do it. One is scaling the normals outward and then rendering it backwards, black, right? And another way is using the normals and the depth map to look for differences in those, and then you can basically draw a line along that. And that's what we're going to do. So we need that. We need emissive bloom, right? Those are going to make our spell effects look a lot better. And that's all I can actually think of right now. This list will probably grow a little bit, but these are the big ones, right? So animation system is first. And so this is actually going to comprise of a couple of things. We're going to wind up utilizing our timeline system that we put in place for that. And we're also going to have a way to not only animate meshes, right, but also animated materials. We're going to need those too, right? So we need to animate both of those things. So I guess what we're going to call these skeletal meshes, right? All right, so we'll have static meshes, we'll have skeletal meshes. And then as far as animated materials, that really just works into the material system we already have. There is one more thing I just thought of, which is going to be blended materials. And this is going to be for the terrain, right? Which we also need to get working. The terrain itself is probably actually working after the refactor, but we need to revisit blended materials as well. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. I felt some hesitation on your end to make the new GTA 6 or 7 with Kohi. Now that you're making a racing game, perhaps new. Yeah, so we have shelved the racing game idea. Just because, frankly, vehicular combat doesn't sell all that well. It's not all that popular right now. Hasn't been for a while. And it just doesn't interest me as much, right? It was something that I was kind of doing, but I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. And the stuff that we would have to do that, I don't necessarily want to do right now. So we are shelving that idea for now. We're not getting rid of it. We're just putting it on the shelf. And what's next? Animal Crossing? No, we're making a top-down 3D isometric action RPG. So I love this game a lot. This type of game a lot. I grew up playing lots of them. Baldur's Gate, that kind of deal. And so I really want to explore making something like that. And you'll notice I also have base building in here. That has a question mark because maybe we'll do some of that as well. Because a lot of those, action RPGs don't really have that kind of mechanic in it. So it might be something fun that we explore once we get sort of the base mechanics. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Don't you need to work with HDR images for bloom to work properly? 0 to 1 range, don't get too bloomy. Yeah, so the bloom effect I want to do is super, super subtle. I only want just a little bit of it, right? So I don't think HDR is going to be necessary. I think we can do it without, because I'm going to be very, very sparing with it, because I think it's overused a lot, and that's part of the danger with it, right? So, on a scale of bloominess, I guess, from 0 to 1, I'm talking like a 0.15 or maybe a 0.2. Yeah. First time chatter, Dustin, my dudes. How's it going? Welcome. Don't miss those days of overbloom. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely don't want to do that, right? I definitely want to keep the bloom to a dull roar. All right. So let's talk a little bit about theme and setting, I guess, because I'm thinking the way that we build this is we could do a little bit like what Rockstar does, where you kind of design and build the world, and then you build the story into that world, right? Because once the world exists, it makes it much easier to say, come up with back stories for all the different zones, right? And obviously we'll modify it, right? But I'm thinking the way that we approach this is we kind of collision camera shake effect. Yeah, I mean that's something we could add that easily. That's not even, I won't even count that as a feature, right? That's literally just moving the position of the camera for a few frames. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so let's do world setting. Yeah, I guess I'll step this up to, 2. Are you thinking open world or more linear? So that is where I want to differ from a lot of action RPGs, because I feel like there's a lot of very linear paths that you have with a lot of RPGs. And I actually kind of want to go, and I'm actually going to put this up here, because this is where we're going to put our high concept, right? I actually want to do something a little bit more like what Elden Ring does, where you can go anywhere, right? And I'm not 100% sure whether I want to make it skill-based. I'm thinking I want to make this skill-based as opposed to item-based, but I haven't really decided that. But I'm thinking within reason, there'll be certain parts of the story that you won't be able to get to, but you should be able to go just about anywhere you want and be able to tackle the story in any order that you want. There's going to be limitations to that, but I would like to have it be a little bit more open, where you can explore more. So like open world, encourage exploration, right? Because I don't want to be too linear with this. Not too linear. Maybe even multiple endings based on actions, choices made, right? And maybe we don't go too bananas with that, right? But that's kind of something that I've always wanted to do also, is have something that can branch where, let's say, for instance, you rescue a peasant or something very early on in the story, and then that peasant winds up going through a whole path that makes them super powerful, and they become a villain later on at the end, towards the end of the game. That kind of thing, So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Thank you for the follow, Def Left. I appreciate that. Just found you today. Love the breakdown. Gave you a sub. Any games you've done before that I can check out? Well, I appreciate that. So most of the games that I've done were all casino-based, like online games, when I was working on them professionally. So I haven't... In the few games that I did release that were just kind of small demos, I took them down because I thought they were crap. So we have most of what I've done has either been contract work or like online casino games outside of my personal stuff. So I've built game engines before, and I've worked on game engines, professional game engines. I worked on the Torque 3D game engine for a while. But yeah, in terms of like modern games or like games that you might have heard of, probably not. We have a level editor. Yeah, we're probably going to need one for sure because we're going to be building a large world, so we're going to need one. All right, so world setting. We probably ought to define some, I guess, basic characteristics of the world. Things like, is it super high tech? Is it medieval? Is it some strange mixture of between? Would you need a dialogue system for the branching storylines? Yes, we absolutely need a dialogue system. Yeah. So yeah, that's something we could put in. That's definitely something we're going to need. And again, I'm going to try and keep these in order in terms of priority when we're going to need them, right? So probably before even the dialogue system, I'm thinking we probably are going to need like, player movement, combat system, stuff like that, right? I guess we could do dialogue system here and then inventory, that kind of thing. And obviously we are just brainstorming, right? I'm going to organize this a lot better than this. We're just jotting down ideas. So in terms of the world itself, I'm thinking it's going to be, you know what, I'm just going to bullet point this for now, and we can make it into pretty sentences later. So in terms of the world setting, I'm thinking I want to say a fantasy setting. We'll say in a world that is how do we want to put this? So in a world that ranges from bright, beautiful, landscapes to dark, dark twisting chasms, right? And everything in between, right? So we'll have like multiple continents. We'll have everything from large cities, probably just a few. I'm thinking probably 2 to 3. And then, some medium-sized towns. And that will probably have, 5 or 6. And then we'll have like villages, small settlements, and we'll have dozens of those, right? And that's just kind of to give an idea of like how things are going to be kind of split up. So internet multiplayer support. So I don't know. That's the thing. We're going to have to make a decision on that fairly early, right? I don't think we're going to support that. I'm pretty sure we're not, actually. And here's the reason. If you do multiplayer, you have to design every single system, all of these systems here, with that in mind. You also have got to host that stuff somewhere. So there's got to be a server. You've got to secure all of that stuff. You've got to manage hacking. You have to manage people, cheating and trying to blow up your servers and stuff like that. I don't know that I want to mess with that. Um, the only thing that I was thinking about in terms of like multiplayer is if we do have the base building, maybe the ability to like visit somebody else's base. Um, and that would basically be limited to just moving around, right? You wouldn't really be able to trade any items. You wouldn't be able to do any of that stuff, I don't think, because again, that just opens the door for cheating and stuff, and you have to kind of lock that kind of thing down. And I'm like, I just don't know that it's worth it, right? I don't think there would be enough added to the game by that to make it worth it. Let's see. Let me catch up here on chat over on this side. Let's see. Okay. Overused a lot. Have you seen Hazel? I haven't seen Hazel lately. Does he overdo it a lot in there? First time chatting on Twitch was on YouTube. Last time I joined the stream. Oh, okay. I thought I recognized the name, but I thought it was weird that it was saying first time chat. But okay, that makes more sense. You're going to try to go at it without an editor? Yes. But, caveat, we're going to build an editor into the game just like I had planned before. So that same plan is going to stick. What we're going to do is we are going to build the editor, or build the editor. We're going to build the world in real time is what we're going to do. And so that was a technique that the Torque 3D engine used. So if you're not familiar with that, this is what that looked like. And I don't know if they actually have a reference in here to it, or maybe a screenshot, probably not. But basically the way this worked is you loaded up what they called a mission. And from that, you essentially would, I think it was F7 or something like that, and it would take you into an editor, and then you could, use editing tools to bring stuff in, import meshes and materials and all that stuff, and create it while you actually had the world open, and then you could hit F7 again, and you would just be transported back into the world and be able to play. So I'm going to take a similar approach to that, and we're going to build the editor into the game. And then after the game is mostly done, we're going to extract those parts out and move them into a standalone editor. But it's likely going to follow that same path, which is completely different to the way that Unreal and Unity do it. But I much prefer that workflow. Baldur's Gate 4 incoming. Yeah, I don't know about that. Voxel. No, I'm not going to use voxels for it. I don't think so. That style doesn't interest me very much. I don't want to create a Minecraft clone, Would a C to animation... Would add a C to animation or an A to player movement root motion? Yeah, so that's going to be kind of included in all this. We're going to take that into account. Isometric is dope. Started tinkering around in my 2D isometric, and it's been quite a puzzler to figure out all the different chord spaces, but it's fun. Yeah, so that's going to be... I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, when I say isometric, I mean 3D isometric. So we are going to have some perspective. I am making that decision now. I'm not going to have your typical sort of orthographic isometric view, right, where it doesn't have perspective. We are going to have perspective. And the reason behind that is, unlike a lot of these games that are made, I'm going to make it in such a way where you can rotate the camera around. And during cutscenes and things like that, we're probably going to be able to move the camera down so that you can see like the skybox and all that stuff. So, we are going to be in 3D, but the camera will predominantly be up and above the player, is what I'm thinking. Let's see. Instead of server, it could be peer-to-peer. Yeah, but that's even harder to enforce, right? Because then you really have no control over what's going on. Let's see. John, thank you so much for the Prime sub. I appreciate the support there. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Sakelos Music, how's it going? Good to see you. Let's see. What do you think about phases, acts like Divinity, where as the story progresses, when you move between acts and locations, this might differ from what you had in mind, though. Let's see. As the story, you're talking about like how you break up the story, where you have like something that comes up on screen and says Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, things like that. Is that what you mean? Because when you say phases, I also think about like what's in World of Warcraft when like something blows up and it leaves, it transforms like Dalaran into like a huge crater, right? So we are going to have a changing world, if that's what you mean. Yeah, and you can't go back to the original location. Yeah, so that's actually a really good point, though. I should probably list that. Phasing. So, and phasing is probably realistically going to be implemented by, I don't even think we need to add that as a feature, because actually, so when I say open world, it's going to be open world, but it's still going to be zoned, right? So we're not going to have like infinitely be able to walk in all directions. That I don't think we need. There's ways to do this without that. We are still going to have loading and unloading zones and things like that. And so I think when we go to phase something, it's just a matter of stop loading Zone A version 1 and start loading Zone A version 2 that has all of those things. So yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely do. Let's see. So I'll put that under here. World changes over time. Phasing. Think loading Zone A version 1 versus Zone A version 2. And so if we do it that way, we actually don't have to build in like a bespoke system for that or anything. So in order to change a place, we would basically just copy pasta the scene and then make the changes we have to, whether it's blowing stuff up or rebuilding things or what have you. And then we'll get that. And we might not even have to do that in all cases. If it's not something that's super extreme, we could just like not show certain objects unless a flag is flipped in the game state somewhere. So I'm not too worried about that. Wild Torque 3D, I haven't heard that name in 20 years or so, it feels like. Yeah. The last time I did some work on it was 2009 when I wrote the material editor for it. Okay. A second or third game with multiplayer would be nice. I agree with you on that, just not for the first. For now, I think the whole idea is to just poop out our first game and develop the engine to that level. Yeah, I agree. I don't need to quite poop it out, but yeah. Recommendations grace me to your stream. I appreciate that. Welcome, by the way, that guy Doro. Well, we're doing something a little bit different tonight than we normally do. We're taking a step back and we're kind of designing a new game that we're going to pivot to, because the previous idea just was not going to cut it, frankly. Are you thinking about static lighting in the world, or adding some sort of day-night cycle with some dynamic lighting? So we already have dynamic lighting. We don't actually have static lighting. And I'm not sure that we're going to need it, but you do bring up a good point. Day-night cycles would be useful. So that's something we could add, for sure. No code, just pure documentation. Yeah. Yeah, so we're just kind of figuring out, what all we need for this. I should put terrain here is already implemented and working. just needs blended materials. We're sort of giving ourselves a to-do list of things that we need to do. And I think we can actually prototype a decent amount of this without any of these in place. And then obviously I'm just kind of trying to prioritize these a little bit. So day-night cycles is definitely something I would love to get in. And it would also be nice to have full control over it, where we could just, let's say you triggered a cutscene and it was like in the middle of the afternoon when you triggered it, but the cutscene's supposed to take place at night, to just, quickly pass time very quickly and just have it move or transition to night from day, that kind of thing. It's like storyboarding out, but for game development. Yeah, more or less. Yep. Are you going to power through it with C or finally implement Lua? I'm not implementing Lua. Yeah, it's all C. C and Kson for our storage format. But yeah, I'm not going to write a scripting language or anything. So I'm thinking the dialogue system is going to be configured in Kson, but yeah, that's about it, right? Yeah, we won't be doing Lua here, so don't worry about that. No worries whatsoever. If I were to ever support something like that, it wouldn't be in the engine core, it would be a plugin. Let's see. Something tells me that the idea was born because of that terrain algo. What do you mean? Ability system. Yeah, so I guess we should probably split this up a little bit, right? Because there's actually there's two lists that we need. All right, I'll put this in first. Right, ability skill tree, but there's actually two lists here. So this is going to be engine features needed, and then down here, game features systems. Right? Because some of these are not going to be specific or reusable outside this particular game. So let's split those up. Let me actually just move this. Let's move this all down to another page. Okay, so all of these things here are all engine stuff that has to be done. All of this stuff is actually game features, right? So that's two. Really, it didn't restart the list? Okay. So this is stuff that, is going to be programmed directly to the game. We're not going to put that into the engine. Something I'm thinking about also, and this I'm going to put a question mark. Localization, right? Now, this is going to have a lot of dialogue, so I don't know if I'm going to do this. I don't know if I'm going to support multiple languages, but I think what I might do is build it as if I'm going to support that, and then if I come in later and just need to add languages, I could just do that. So that's the plan on that. Yeah. So I'll probably build out the localization system, and I'll build it all in English. And that way later, if I decide, hey, I want to get this translated to Brazilian Portuguese, right? I'm sure Tammin would be happy with that. Then I could do that with relative ease. Yeah. Thinking the same thing, breaking up gameplay versus engine requirements. Yeah, 100%. Yep. Okay, so we have... Oh, day-night cycles, actually. That is more of a thing for up here. That's more of an engine-specific thing. All right. This is probably enough to get us going, right? In terms of building a really decent demo. We're gonna add to this list, but I think that's good for now, at least until we kind of start coming up with more stuff here. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about world setting, right? Now that I'm thinking about it, though, do we support... I'm going to put this down here, actually, too. Mounts, question mark. That, I think, is something that we could put in place, like a mount system. Maybe only in certain zones. Okay. So that's mounts are something to consider too. Yeah, and you can't go back to the original location. Yeah. So this one here would be like so i.e. Let's say maybe a version would be incremented, and you could never go back to version 1 once version 2 has been activated. Example, city is destroyed. Okay. So there's a couple of ways that we could do this. Actually, we should probably split this up, right? Because we have phasing. And then we can also have small scale changes by hiding or showing hiding. Meshes in the world as game state flags are flipped, etc. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Let's see. How does your AI currently work in Kohi, or you haven't gotten that far yet? No, we haven't gotten that far yet. Yeah, so AI is going to be definitely something we have to consider. But that, I feel like might be included in the combat system. So we could put a note here that says enemy AI, right? Because that kind of falls under the well, I guess it kind of does and it kind of doesn't. Right? Because we're also going to have like NPC AI, which is probably not going to be anything crazy, but maybe we want to have NPCs like walking around, tending vendor stalls and stuff like that, and doing random things to make it seem a little bit more alive. NPC is non-player character, so like a vendor in a city or something like that. Let's see. Are you wanting it to be tied to your game or built into your engine? So if you mean like the generative AI and stuff like that, no, we're not going to do any of that. Does STL support 3D? Not directly. I think you have to use OpenGL for that or Vulkan, but you can use those with it. Thank you so much, by the way, for the Prime sub. I really appreciate the support. Thank you very much for that. SDL3 has SDL3 GPU, which is amazing. Oh, it does it now. Okay, I have not used SDL3, admittedly. Yeah, I always thought, like, I know with SDL2 you had to use OpenGL or Vulkan. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Appreciate that. All right. what type of action will we get? Railguns, potato guns, Kamehameha, Kamehameha. So yeah, I guess we could talk about some of that stuff, right? We can kind of bounce back and forth between different things, just kind of as we're brainstorming. So I'll just go. I guess we'll talk about wanted combat mechanics, right? So maybe we have, obviously we need melee combat. So that's going to be everything from swords, clubs, daggers, etc. We are going to have magic, right, of some sort. So, you know, fireball, ice bolt, freeze, etc. So we'll have that. Also, AoEs, or area of effects, right? That's gonna be a big one. I guess for melee, we'll have different damage areas. So AoE, conal, etc. Right? So they have to be within a certain cone in front of the player in order to actually get hit. Or some things like a whirling slash might, you know, do a 360. So we have magic, which is AoEs and ranged, and then we'll have ranged. It's not ranged melee. What's the word I'm looking for like arrows and stuff, like bow and arrow. I can't think of what the term should be. I guess just physical damage, right? So we'll have bow and arrow. We'll have like maybe boomerang or something like that. We'll have debuffs and curses, yeah. Debuffs, curses, dots, damage over time. We'll also have buffs, and heal over time. Blessings, yeah, that's a good term for it. Blessings. That's a good way to put it. Let's see. So buffs, curses, dots, buffs, blessings, hots. And then we might have we might see about looking into some environmental aspects. So some ideas I have around this is like maybe you can so some examples, maybe whirling slash on a tree causes it to fall in a direction after 2 seconds or something like that, right? Causing damage to those in that area, right? So like you could use that to take out a bunch of guys at once or something like that, that kind of thing. So there might be stuff like that maybe we could put in. Isn't it just called ranged? Range attacks, I guess, could be, yeah. I mean, range attacks, I guess. Attacks, not attaches. So I think that should cover it. Right? That's quite a range of different stuff. And we'll obviously have to balance all of that. environment aspects are cool, like miasma effect on certain areas, Monster Hunter World. Yeah, I think using the environment would be kind of a cool way to enhance it a little bit. If you looked at the way Unreal has the gameplay ability system, it breaks this kind of stuff up pretty holistically. Abilities, attributes, effects, tags might be a good ref if you wanted. I've not looked into that, but I might. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Because that's certainly, I mean, I'll take all the reference I can get, right? Even if I don't go that way, it's worth still looking at. Let's see. Good thing about this game is I will have plenty to watch on Wednesday, Thursday for the next couple of years. Good thing. Yes, definitely, for sure. Especially once we get some of these initial systems knocked out, like this animation system. Like, more than likely, I'll probably start working on this week, just to get it knocked out, right? And I think a lot of this is going to be making assets, I think. There is quite a lot of programming to do, but we already have a lot of stuff we need to actually get this going. And a lot of this other stuff kind of builds on top of things we already have, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we already do shadow casting. We already do, we don't, ooh, you know what? There is actually one thing that I know we're going to want to add. And this is a to-do in the engine, but I'm going to put it here anyways. Point light shadows. Because we get shadows cast from directional lights, but we don't have it for point lights yet. And that's going to be super important for spell effects. Because like as you throw a fireball down a hallway or something and there's objects in it, you want to see those shadows like reflecting and getting cast up on stuff. That would look really cool, right? And so you'd use a point light to do that with point light shadows. So that's definitely something we want to get in. Let's see. It's also one of the most undocumented and complex systems in UE the last time I checked. Yeah, and that's... So what I don't want to do is I don't want to make this overly complex, right? I want to try to avoid complexity wherever we can. And try to keep it simple, right? We can develop all these systems without making them overcomplicated, I think. So yeah. That's going to be a challenge, but I think it's one worth investigating. Okay, so we have our combat mechanics. I want another section here for wanted world mechanics, right? And this is slightly different because it is mechanics, but it's like ones that aren't necessarily combat related. So what I'm thinking is loot mechanic, right? So when enemy dies, how do we get loot? Need a way to only accept partial loot, etc. etc. A subset of this could be opening a treasure chest. Taking items off a table, that kind of thing, right? Maybe it'd be context sensitive. Yeah, so inventory is definitely one, which I guess this is kind of down here too. So actually, let's actually take all of this stuff. We're going to keep engine features down here. But let's move all this stuff to mechanics, right? I'm going to paste this here just for a second. So let's see. Player movements. Right, so obviously we need to put this here. Enemy AI, right? So we're gonna have player movements. We're gonna have NPC AI, inventory. Let me see if I could actually just move this up here. So abilities, skill tree, mounts. We'll have that there just as a question mark. Maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. So with player movement, here's what I'm thinking for this. So player movement will be relatively restricted. Running around. Maybe jumping. I don't know if jumping is going to be there yet, right? But mostly bound to the ground. Using physics system we already have. Jumping, I'm going to put a question mark, right? I don't know how much we want to have jumping be a mechanic in here. I'm not sure that we really need it. We'll see. Stealing also, like how you piss off NPCs in Baldur's Gate if you steal loot at certain locations. Yeah, I mean, we could put that in here, right? Right? We could maybe put that in. I'll put a question mark. Let's see. So NPC AI. What do we mean by NPC AI? NPCs move about the world and appear to have purpose. I.e., tending a vendor stall, walking home at the end of the day, etc. I don't know how crazy we want to go with that, right? But like maybe vendor stalls aren't open 24/7, right? You have to go there during the day. Let's see. Traditionally, inventory components allow for chests, NPCs, enemies, player, etc. to hold items. Yes. Yeah. So, how do we want to put that? So, the following entities can have inventories. So obviously player. And so that's going to be, what's the word I want to say? Editable, right? Changeable. Whereas NPCs carry items can be stolen, dropped if killed. Enemies drop items when killed. Chests drop items when opened, etc. Yeah. Do you have an I/O setup in your engine, allowing you to map inputs based on the context the player is in? So we do have a keybind system set up that we can map to various functions and things like that. So yeah, we do have an input system. It's not currently tied to anything, so the game right now has to fully define all that stuff, which is fine. But yeah, we do have one. Let's see. Since it's an RPG, we need to remember the time-honored tradition of taking everything not nailed down in someone's home. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I don't know how nuts I want to go with that, right? Like, I think it might be funny to make jokes around some of that stuff, but I don't know, like, and I guess that kind of brings up something else about inventory, right? So let me move this to a subpoint and move these in, because there's another point I want to have here. Limits. Every inventory system has to have limits, right? One thing that I have absolutely always deplored in games is inventories where you have to like physically arrange items in an inventory. Let me see if I can find an example of what I mean. See if I could, okay. Yeah, I guess kind of like this. This is an okay example, right? Where you've got some items that take up multiple slots. Like this, to me, has always been super tedious and annoying, and I'm not a fan of it. So I definitely do not want to do that. One thing that I think works is having a weight assigned. You could go the WoW route and just have a number of slots that you can carry, right? And it doesn't matter how much weight it is, and you could just, essentially have, all the materials to build a house in your pocket, essentially. And you're not limited in that fashion. You're only limited by quantity. So there's limiting by quantity, there's limiting by weight, and then there's limiting by like physical size. So that last one, I don't want to do that. Must collect every wheel of cheese. Yeah. Please add vase breaking. You know what? That's. I feel like that's a break stuff, breakable stuff, right? Yeah, we definitely want the ability to do that. Maybe contains items. Yeah, because I remember like one of the first games that I remember making pretty heavy use of that was God of War. I know there was ones before it, but that's just the one that sticks in my head. Old versions of Moo Online. Is that Dark and Darker? What was that actually from? Might have been. Let me see. I think I killed the window. Does this page actually say what it was from? I don't know if it does. It might have been. I mean, I could just look it up, I guess. No, I don't think so. No, I think it was something else. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, it's something else. Thought it was Diablo 2. The O kind of makes me think it was. Yeah, they could have been Diablo. Yeah, could have been. Similar, yeah, for sure. I think a weight system is the most logical way, specifically when you can be stronger to carry more items. Yeah, I thought the weight system is kind of the best way to go. The other game that I thought made a really good use of it was Cyberpunk. Um, weight limitations, more strength gives you the ability to carry more weight. So I tend to be a fan of that. I think if we have a weight limitation, we probably are not going to need, you know, a numeric limitation to the amount of items you can have. That does bring up something though, because a lot of games, including like Diablo and Cyberpunk, and even have like storage or like a bank, a place where you can store extra items you aren't carrying around or don't want to carry around. There we go. So I think having a storage / bank would be a good idea too. Let's see. Some rogue games have weight and physical space limitations, like you need backpacks and bags to hold your stuff. I think that's cool, but it really depends on what you're going for. So I do want to have limitations, right? But I don't want it to like cripple the game. I definitely don't want to go with like shape limitations, like what we just talked about. I definitely don't want to go that route. I've always found that extremely annoying and too limiting. So I definitely don't want to do that. Companions. I'm going to put a question mark there because I don't know. Ones that fight alongside. Dreaded escort missions. Right? Does anybody really want to do an escort mission? I don't know. Maybe peek at Giant Sloth Games YouTube videos for his game and his custom engine. Sounds like it's a similar idea. Okay. I'm going to I will take a look at that. All right. Let's see. Need a fee for every item or weight. Long Dark did that well. Heavier carriers equals more risk of injury. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. I like item caps per type, like 6 out of 10 healing potions, but every item basically. So that's kind of like that's kind of like what WoW does, right? Where they don't have like a weight limitation, but you do have limits on the number of stuff you can carry. Like the way WoW handles it is stackable items have a max stack number that you can stack those items in a single inventory slot. Sometimes they'll have like unique, you can only carry one of these, or unique, you can only carry 2 of these, type of thing. So maybe that's something to look into as well. So let's put all of these under here, right? So we'll do stack size slash bag slot count limit, right? Can only stack X per slot or unique One per, right? So that's another. We can play around with these. We don't necessarily have to stick to something right now. We can come back to that and see what works and what doesn't once we actually get there. But yeah, I also do like the item cap style as well. So maybe we find some sort of limit here. Like maybe we have weight limitations, but we also have some sort of stack size limitation or count limit for some items. Need a fee for every item or weight. Yeah, I mean, so I guess when talking about fees, something else that is a good point is buy sell, right? Every item has a purchase and sell price. And then maybe we can even say some items can only be sold to certain vendors, right? No, we've been on inventories for a bit, but will you be having multiple classes in your game? Or you can be whatever you kind of spec into thing. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go the class route because I find that a little bit more difficult to balance. And I feel like there's always going to be one class that's just OP, and that's always going to be the right one to choose to beat the game, right? I think I'm going to go the skill tree route or something similar to that, where you build up whatever it is that you want to do. Now, whether or not we allow respecking, that's another thing, right? So we'll say no classes. Respec, I don't know if we'll allow that or not, but we can put it in there. Let's see. If you put pets in the game, I will find a way to break the game using them. Yeah, pets are not going to be a thing. That's not something I'm interested in programming. It's a pain in the ass. Pets are always a pain in the ass in the game. They always break. And I don't know. I feel like that's a huge vector for bugs for something that doesn't really add to the gameplay either. So yeah, I think as far as that goes, we're not going to allow that. If we do have pets, they'll be cosmetic only. Just wait seems fine for me if you don't want something more complicated. Yeah, so I don't know where I'm going to land on that, so I'll just put both, and we'll try both, and then we'll see what works. In-game currency, yeah, that's another one, which I guess is part of inventory, right? So, currency of some sort. Now, again, this is something that we could do a couple of different ways. We could just have one thing, like Gil in Final Fantasy. It's just one currency, and that's it. Or we could do something like what WoW does, where you have copper and silver and gold, right? And as you get 100 copper, then you get a silver, you get 100 silver, you get a gold. I don't know if that's really necessary or not, because it doesn't really matter, because it's still just all one number anyway. So I tend to think just one kind of currency for everything. I mean, we could have like different currencies for continents and exchange rates and all that, but I really don't feel like that's going to add to the game. Let's see. Long Dark is kind of in a realistic way, so they have dynamically growing inventory space, but like mentioned, the risk of injuries and the player gets more tired faster, burns calories, etc. Pretty cool mechanics for a survival game. So that is a cool mechanic, but you mentioned a couple things there that I don't want to do. So no classes the Seaway, exactly, yes. So it's not a survival game. I don't want to have those features in there. I don't want you to have to like eat and maintain, you know, temperature and all that kind of stuff. Frankly, I don't think it's going to add that much, right? It's not really a survival game, so I don't think I'm going to put those kind of mechanics in. And so I don't think the weight injury thing is something that I'm going to do either. I don't feel like it's going to fit with the style of game because we're like literally going up and bashing people with a sword, right? Or a club or something like that. And if we're talking realism here, you know, you're not going to be carrying, 200 kilos worth of stuff in a backpack and clubbing people, right? It's just not going to work. Let's see. Don't disagree, but isn't the skill tree route the same issue in different clothes? There's a one skill tree route that beats them all. So that is a good point, right? And a solid point. You're not wrong. My thought behind that is to have a little bit kind of like what Elden Ring does. Again, I bring up Elden Ring, but like it works really well for the most part. It's got its issues too, but like if you decide to spec into, mostly melee combat and strength and all that stuff, you're probably going to struggle against bosses and stuff that require or that are more susceptible to magic damage than physical damage, right? So if you spec too heavily in one direction, it's not necessarily going to, it'll make you overpowered in some battles, but in other ones it should make you weak because you can't damage the bosses effectively because you're not strong in that area. So that's kind of my thought on how to balance that. Is that you don't necessarily want to go too extreme in one direction and completely ignore another direction because it might screw you later down the road. That's going to be all a matter of balance, though. So we're going to have to test the hell out of it, for sure. I don't like classes. I don't like being locked out of content and having to make huge decisions at the beginning of the game with low information. Yeah, that's my problem with classes. Yep. Also limits what you can design because everything should be beatable by every class. Yes. I think it just makes it overcomplicated for no reason. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. The pet from Torchlight that functions as a send to market helper. That's an interesting idea. Is it like an RPG? Maybe I missed the game style. Last I saw you were making that runner game. Yeah, so the runner game is shelved for now. Yeah, so what we're aiming for here is like a top-down 3D isometric, but perspective action RPG with maybe base building. So it's going to be relatively open world. I say open world, but zoned. To encourage exploration, right? So we don't want to make it too linear. We do want to have multiple endings based on actions and choices that the player makes. I'm going to cross off internet multiplayer. We're not going to do that. I can already tell you that it's going to blow out the scope. Classes make more sense for multiplayer systems. Agreed. +1 classes are annoying. Agreed. Personally dislike classes a lot as well. Seems like most of us are in agreement. I'm not going to act like I've never seen a good game that has classes. Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of games out there that have great class implementations. It's just not something that I think I want to get into designing. I just don't like it enough to worry about it. You won't be implementing classes in the game because it will be written in C. Yes. Actually, hold on. I have something to show you. Let me step away and get it. Let me switch cameras here. You guys might appreciate this. I'm going to have to hold it back here, I guess. You have no class. Says the pompous C++. that that hangs up on my wall over there. It's one of my favorites. Let's see. Oh, the on-air light again. What a dingus. What a dingus. All right. V-table or die. No thanks. You keep your V-table. All right. Roguelike elements or random loot. Random loot's a good one. Oh, I mean, that's probably going to be like a random loot table, right? And probably chests as well. Maybe not chests, but certainly enemies. The more weight you carry, the slower you are in melee attacks. So we could do that if you're encumbered, right? Slows movement, speed, and attack. Speed? Question mark. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I like item caps for type. Oh yeah, you put that one over there. Okay. Really like to do the way they do it in the game Outward. It's kind of silly though because you drop your backpack whenever you go into combat. Wait, you drop your backpack whenever you go into combat in that game? That would drive me absolutely nuts. I mean, yes, technically it's more realistic, but then if you die, then your loot's just sitting there. What about having different bags that can hold different types of items? So I've seen this mechanic implemented in a couple, and again, WoW comes to mind because they had this for a while. And they eventually, I think, did away with it too because it's annoying, right? So like in WoW, what they had was you only have, was it 4 or 5 bag slots? I think it's 5. And so you had a slot for bags that you could put them in. And then the bags that you put in there could hold different types of items. So you could have generic bags that hold any type of item. But then you had bags that only would hold like herbalism items or mining items. And the bag's quantity was increased. So it was a really big bag, but it could only hold those types of items. And I don't know, it was annoying because you'd wind up having lots of space in the specialized bag and your other bags would be full. And I just found that it was just kind of more annoying than anything else. Like it's great for a bank, but yeah, I don't know. Like how Fallout New Vegas did it, where something had weight and then you turned on hard code mode, everything had weight. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Will there be dinosaurs in the game? No, probably not. But who knows? It's an RPG. We could do anything, right? Did you finish Overdrive 2069? I did not. I shelved that idea for several reasons. Namely because I had been doing some market research on vehicular combat games. They're not all that popular right now. Most of them that come out don't really sell that well. And I wasn't really in love with the idea, to be completely honest. And so I'm not getting rid of it. I'm just shelving it for a bit while I can, and I'm going to focus on the game that actually interests me for now, which is what we're talking about designing now. I remember those. They were for certain professions, right? Yes. Yeah. So they were like herbalism, mining. I think warlocks could get like a
a soulstone bag, I think, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I played WoW, but I do remember that. Yeah. And as far as I know, they mostly got rid of those as of a few expansions ago. Unless they brought it back. Again, I haven't played WoW in like 10 years, but still. Okay. Just started porting my game to C, looking for group. Nice. Good luck. Now we're live. Yeah. Yeah. I wish I could get that to turn on automatically, but it's got a separate switch. If you're doing base building, does that mean enemies are dropping materials? What is the loop of gameplay you'd like? So that is the part I have not expected yet, or explored yet. As to whether or not we're going to do base building, or whether it's even worth it or makes sense, right? That's why I have a question mark there, because I don't know if that makes sense. We have V tables, just chuck mesh trucks. Will it be turn-based? Will the combat be a different game state than the exploring? Yes. So, yeah, auto mod got you. I think I got it in time. All right. Yeah, the combat will be. I'm not going to do it like the old school Final Fantasy where you like, sort of transition into a battle scene and then do the turn-based like. I don't think I'm going to do turn-based combat at all, actually. I think it's going to be active, right? So you'll be able to swing the sword as often as you're able, or as the ability is able, that kind of thing. And you're not going to like port into a different scene and do it the traditional sort of old school Final Fantasy way. I'm not going to do that. I just envision it being, sort of open world battling. By roguelike, I meant it to be really hard to do both. If you're making an action RPG, then it's like the main drive. Yeah. Auto mod. So the auto mod that got you was you typed in try hard, and for some reason auto mod picked that up. Beats me. Loot is the main drive. What do you want? The reason for players to go out and brave the dangers. Yeah. So it's mostly going to be loot, experience. I don't know if I want to go with an experience system or a skill-based system. Skill-based system is kind of cool, but I don't know if it's. I don't know which way I want to go. So if I go skill-based, that means the combat's got to be a little bit harder, right? It means that I'm going to have to account for things like dodging and rolling and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. I don't know if I love it. But if I go the traditional RPG, like, level-based approach, then the problem with that is you get locked into doing things in a kind of a linear path, which I also want to avoid, because I don't want you to go, oh, well, maybe I want to go left instead of right, but going left has level 20 enemies and I'm level 5, right? I hope you rethink the dinosaur thing. I mean, we could put dinos in there somewhere. Reminds me, resources and crafting. I have mixed feelings about crafting. I love and hate crafting. And here's why. Because a lot of times, and this is a mistake a lot of games make, is the crafted stuff that you can get can be replaced by something higher level or better that you can get from a dungeon or a raid, right? And I'm mostly talking about MMOs here, but in a lot of games, like, the crafted items can just be replaced by something better, so what's the purpose of crafting? Now, if we were to structure this in such a way where the ultimate weapon that you can get is only something that you can craft, then I think it would be worth it, right? Yeah, I don't, maybe that's the way to do it, though. I think if we're going to do crafting, that would have to be the route that we go. Do you mean you drop your bag as a try-hard mechanic, not as a literal game mechanic, just something you exploit to be better? That's a good question. That was somebody over on the YouTube side mentioned. Um, yeah, they said, let's see, the game's called Outward, and it says apparently you drop your backpack whenever you go into combat, which I guess is like literally, I'm gonna fight, so let me take my backpack off so I can move. I'm guessing that's what it is. They did get rid of profession bags, and I agree they were kind of useless because you can get pretty big bags easily these days. It was harder in the old days, so maybe it was the reasoning for it. That could be, yeah. Thank you for the follow, by the way, Greenbit. I'm still catching up on chat here. I'm a little bit behind. Base building would make your game stand out more. What about going into the wilds and finding NPCs that you bring back to the base? Each could offer you new systems or features, like a chef, get meals that can... Ooh. Thorgis, that's a really good idea. ARPG Terraria. Okay. Let's move this out of question mark to territory for right now, and let's explore this a bit. So let's put this here. Requires gathering resources. I can't spell tonight. To build. And then I guess basically go exploring to find NPCs that you can recruit to your base as it grows to unlock various systems benefits. So like an example of this, recruiting a chef from a city to cook high value food items for you that provide powerful buffs. Better than items you can craft yourself over a campfire. Something like that. Yeah. That's a really, really excellent idea. I like that a lot. I think you're right. That would make it worth it. Right? We can also talk crafting for a second. So, ability to craft items out of found looted resources. Crafted end game items are far more powerful than anything you can find / buy in the world. I think that would make that worth it, right? Some things could be crafted by a specialist using items you craft first as a base. For example, an ultimate sword crafted by a hired blacksmith using using, what's the term I'm looking for? Forged. Using a forged blade, forged like mithril blade, you crafted along with an ivory handle, etc. Both hard items to obtain materials for and make. So this kind of would like expand the crafting idea where like you can make some pretty good stuff, but like the end all be all things might be made by a specialist that you hire. So instead of a chef, it'd be a blacksmith that you would find on some remote island somewhere, and you'd do some quests to convince him to come back and work for you. And he would basically be able to take these already difficult items that you've already crafted yourself and make for you an ultimate sword or something like that. All right. LaFoley, good to see you. Welcome. Honestly, I don't like the experience things all RPGs do. You can always grind and beat bosses with a higher level, just trivializes the difficulty behind a boring task. I don't know how you could replace it, though, but I think it's worth think about. And that's why I'm saying I'm not sure whether I want to do... the experience thing, I think, is kind of played out, too. I really agree with you. It's just finding a decent replacement for that is a bit of a challenge. Not impossible, but I think that's a good idea. Most base building games eventually become farting in the castle when you got everything and have no reason to go outside and explore. Yeah, so there might even be events where your base gets attacked. And you must defend / go out and take out the enemy to stop the attacks. Maybe. Something like that. But yeah, I agree. We want to avoid having a base so strong that it's like completely eliminates you having to go into the cities or something like that. I guess we'll put that in here. Remember to balance this such that the player will always have a reason to leave the base, not just hang around there all the time. Will there be skeleton animations? If so, what format are you going to use? So we're going to import formats. I haven't decided yet. I might go Collada just because it's easy. But we're going to have our own proprietary custom format of skeletal meshes and animations. So we're going to do that, and that's so that the runtime doesn't have to worry about converting that stuff on load. You just import that as we do with our other assets, and we use our own proprietary format. So we are going to make that. You mean to export from Blender, for example? Yeah, so we'll probably use Collada for that, because that's a pretty portable format. Used to like crafting, then every game did it, even ones that don't need it. Now it's just ever done. And that's the thing, right? Like, so one of the games that I think did crafting really well is actually Final Fantasy XIV. Because they actually introduced a thing where they've had... Let me back up for a second. So one thing that I've always deplored is how WoW did it. Because WoW actually... all the old world stuff from previous expansions that you crafted is 100% useless when a new expansion comes out. I hate that. I always have hated it. I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. I don't want to do that. Final Fantasy XIV takes a different route, where even stuff that you craft on very early in the game, some of those items, or a lot of those items, are used to make later items, which are then used to make even later items, which are then used to make the ultimate thing you want. And so you have this whole chain of things that you have to build up along the way, and even the stuff that you learned very, very early on is still useful to craft. And I would want to maintain a system like that where, even crafting copper bolts can be useful in an end game thing that you do, right? So yeah, it's like a main mechanic in the game. Yeah, the crafting, I mean, kinda. But I do agree with you, though, that crafting is overdone, and I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. If we're going to do it, let's do it right and let's make it robust, right? Can your character walk freely, or is it secretly tile-based? It's not going to be tile-based. You'll be able to walk freely. You are going to be confined to certain walkable areas, right? So I'm not going to have like super precise collision on a lot of things, because I don't really think that's needed for a game like this. If there's like a stack of debris, you'll just won't be able to walk within a certain circle of it, and I think that's fine. So there'll be hitboxes on stuff where you won't be able to proceed, but it'll be visually obvious that you can't walk into that area. But yeah, movement, you'll be able to move freely in the 4 different directions or whatever, how many whatever axis of rotation. Jumping, I don't know if I'm going to support yet. I don't know if there's going to be too much of a reason to support it. I tend to think not, but jumping can be fun to have too, so I don't know. I don't know where I landed on that. Kenshi has a similar mechanic where enemies attack the base based on the world state / local region. It's pretty fun. Yeah, so I think that might be something that we can do too. Is just have events that are triggered by the story, essentially. I think random events doing that and just having that happen would be annoying. But story-driven ones, I think, certainly make sense. Okay. Main plot conflict is the Empire taxing your base. Right? That's a main point of conflict on everyday life, for sure. Terraria kind of does it, but you could crank it up to 100. Terraria is awesome, but it's mostly shops. Yeah, so I wouldn't want it to be mostly shops. I would want it to be things that actually benefit you in some way. We need redstone in this game. Obligatory dwarven smith, of course. Actually, so I'm going to come back to that. Remind me about dwarves in a couple minutes because I want to catch up on chat, but I have a detour to take about that. What kind of game are we drafting? So this is a top-down 3D isometric, yet perspective action RPG. And so it's going to be open world, but like zoned. So it's not going to be, you can't just walk from one end to the other necessarily, but it'll be zoned. It's going to encourage exploration and try to avoid too much of a linear storyline as much as possible. And same with exploration. And then we're going to have multiple endings based on choices made and actions taken. So that's kind of what we're working on now. Let's see. What about go into the wilds and day and night you can return to defend attacks. While out in the day you can find people to help defend, people to build. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? That's going to be a reason to go into the cities and the towns and stuff like that, is to encourage that kind of thing, to not only explore but also get items that you need, hire hands to help build the base and that kind of thing. three stream streak, triple dingus. I don't know what to say to triple dingus. I got nothing. Can the chef die? I don't know. That's a good question. Do we want to go in that level of detail, right? Because let's use the blacksmith as an example, right? Because we have this whole example that we talked about, um, where we were saying some things can be crafted by a specialist, right? An ultimate sword could be crafted by a hired blacksmith. That maybe you have to go off to some remote mountain or remote island or something to find them. Realistically, if this was that kind of ultimate sword, there'd really only be one guy in the world that'd be able to make that, right? So should we allow him to die? Because that could be game breaking, right? Like if your base gets attacked and you're not there, or you fail it for some reason, and this guy dies, then what? Right? I don't know. I feel like we would have to be very careful with that because I feel like that could go wrong and could be, if we're not careful, it could like soft lock the game even, because you might be blocked on progress somehow if we're not careful with it. Like Diablo or more action based. So I definitely think we're gonna go more action based. We actually haven't really talked about controls yet. So I guess that's probably something we could bang out real quick. At least some ideas. So yeah, let's talk about that for a second. We're gonna do controls and then we're gonna. Whoops. Okay, I guess it did the next line down. That seems fine. So we're gonna say combats and world roaming. Right, because I feel like those are two completely separate control schemes. So let's see. Can I recommend a book for you? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Please do. Have to come up with reasons to not sit and be comfy. Yes, exactly. Build a community of people. Blacksmith, chef, alchemist, doctor, stable master, teacher, farmer, literally most professions you could twist into a mechanic. Yeah. But we have to not go overboard with it. Because the other thing that I don't want to happen is I don't want this to turn into a base management game either. Right? I don't want it to go so far down that route that you don't actually go out and finish the game, right? Or finish the story. So I do want it to be an aspect, right? Potentially, if we go down that road. But I don't want it to be... It's not going to be the core game loop, right? Interactive storytelling by Chris Crawford might be useful for this open world setting. Multiple endings, etc. Okay. Let me type that into the Google machine real quick. I assume you're talking about this guy. Is that the right one? That's the one. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I will go ahead and pick that up. He goes in depth on a more interactive narrative than a game, but I think it could be incorporated to a game to make something unique. Okay. Oh, that's an excellent recommendation. Thank you. It looks like it's got pretty good reviews too. Okay, so somebody mentioned something about dwarves. So the dwarven blacksmith, right, is kind of a played out thing, and I guess that's fine. But like, I started reading this one book recently, or a series of books. It is. Let me pull it up real quick. Let me find it. Okay. It's this book. R.A. Salvatore's The Highwayman. And one concept that is in this book that I thought was super interesting is dwarves in this are like murdering, rampaging little shits that like to kill humans. And they have like a magical hat that they wear that they dip in the human's blood to get them more like power. right? And they're like super super violent and just like are the bane of the world's existence. And I thought that that was like kind of hilarious. Also, where the book takes it and where the book after this is taking it is also really interesting. But like, that was kind of an interesting take on dwarves that I've never seen before. Um, so yeah, I might wind up going as something similar to that. Maybe it'll be gnomes instead of dwarves or something. I don't want to like rip the idea exactly, right? But like, um, yeah, I thought it was, you know, murderous rampaging little shits is the only thing I could describe them as. But yeah, it was deeply hilarious, and I don't think that's how he meant it, but like I was literally laughing as I was reading it because it was just funny to me. Just the mental picture of these little guys just going around just carving people up, just like they're the bane of entire towns are like afraid of them and stuff. It's just crazy to me. Um, but yeah, maybe he's one of those, right? Something, I don't know. Um, let's see. All right, so let me catch up on the YouTube chat. Um, I love RPG chats. So many ideas. Yeah, exactly. There are so many ideas, and we actually haven't even done controls yet, so we need to get into that. Might be a good idea to have a normal mode where NPCs can't die, and then have a hardcore mode where they can. So I don't know that I want to have different difficulty levels, because I've always felt like difficulties for me always seem fake, I guess. Um, the problem that I have with it is it always feels artificial. Like the boss just has more health and you take more damage, and that's the difficulty, right? Um, and I feel like most games do that, and I feel like whenever I see a difficulty setting on a game, that's always what it is. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not usually a huge fan of putting different difficulty levels in. Support a cockpit view with a driving wheel. I don't think we're gonna have any vehicles in this game at all. Time estimate for this? No idea yet. Time to a demo? I'm gonna say at least a year out. So yeah, we'll have to figure all that out. Depends on where we land in terms of scope. I'm also going to have a lot of offline work to do in terms of coming up with a story, but we got to build the world first. Different difficulties make me feel like I didn't play the correct version of the game. Yes, exactly. That's the reason I don't like it, because it always feels like you played the wrong version. And frankly, with an RPG, the game elements are fun, but I'm usually there for the story, and I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are the same way. So I want it to have challenges, right? And maybe I'll have extra things that you can do on the side for extra challenges that maybe get you better rewards or, I don't know, achievements, something. But I don't want to make the core game loop super hard, right? Because that's not what it's all about. The last thing I want is like, and I've used this example for other things, but the last thing I want is like the Elden Ring crowd who is just like, oh, well, you cheese the boss because you use this to kill the... No, I use something to kill the boss. Like, that should be fine. Like, why is there a right and a wrong way to do it, right? Like, I don't want that kind of discussion. Difficulty is part of the experience. Making multiple is like making a procedural world. You lose some control of the craft. Yes, I agree. I think that each encounter should be tailored to be a unique experience at a single difficulty level. And some of those by nature should be harder than others. Let's see. So no. Yes, exactly. Cell phone. Perhaps depending on the kind of stuff you create and build, you make different kinds of enemies. That could be. Maybe the enemies shift slightly based on what you've picked. Arcade games have an interesting take on difficulty using a system called rank. The game gets harder the better you do, and it affects bullet speeds, whether certain things spawn, boss behaviors, etc. I have a love-hate relationship with that too, because sometimes I just want to proceed, right? Sometimes I don't want to get blocked in the game by something that's super hard because I did really well in the last 3 fights, and then all of a sudden there's just something that's super hard that I can't get past. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe you could make the combat be a different game state that is about motorbike races, right? Yeah, I mean, we could, I guess, technically, make that into a mini game somehow. Or maybe with horses or dragons or something. I like Elden Ring for difficulty. You either face the boss right away with skill, or go out to farm so that you can get. Wait a minute. Go out and farm so you can crush it with high damage. Yeah, so that's kind of. I'm leaning a little bit more towards that, right? Where like maybe you can kill it with skill if you're good enough, but you don't have to do it that way. That appeals to me for sure. Let's see. In some games, cough cough, battle Garaga, your lives become a resource because you can SD to lower the rank. SD. Is that like seppuku? Little dipshits, yes. Love hate, he says. You just have a hate relationship with it. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair enough. Not sure I like the rank difficulty above. It sounds like a single player SBMM. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that's another thing. Like when WoW put in the sliding scale where like all of the mobs rank up with you or level up with you, I hated that change. I thought it was terrible. Because one of the benefits to getting more powerful is you can go in to one of the previous areas that we did before where stuff was rolling your face, but now you're a lot stronger and you can go in there and just swipe them all down, right? That's super satisfying sometimes. So I don't want to take that away. Rank works better in a more action-oriented game. Yeah, I would agree with that. For an RPG, I was just making a point that it's possible to do more than just more HP. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Enemy behavior changing with difficulty is much better starting place. I don't disagree there. Yeah. Behavior changing, I think, is interesting. That might be a little harder to balance, though, is my only concern there. But I don't dislike the idea. I like difficult areas, let you know you're in the wrong place, but you're free to try the boss if you're a monster. It's just not a surprise uber boss. Yeah. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, so I do like the thing about... I do like the aspect of Elden Ring where like you can go in there and kill everything as a level 1 if you're good enough. You can actually do it. There's been people that have done it on the stream. You gotta be like uber good to do that, but it's possible. Right? You basically just have to never get hit. That has its own considerations to make that possible, but I don't hate the idea either. The way rank could be used to scale the difficulty is by increasing the number of mobs. That's true. Although that also feels a little bit... It feels a little bit fake too. That would make going back to easier areas even more satisfying. Yes and no. At a certain point, you are limiting content to harder difficulties, which is something I would avoid. Yeah. Doom-style enemy movement, yeah. Just slay tons of mobs in a single blow. Yeah, I mean, there is doing that, but yeah. How are you going to section out these zones since you don't like the idea of EXP and stuff, by the way? If you don't have areas that become easier to complete / harder to do, what would be the point of having things that make you stronger in the first place? So, my thought is we're not going to have levels. We're not going to have EXP. The mobs themselves will vary, though, in terms of how much health they have and how much damage they take to kill, right? And so that in and of itself is a very easy way to sort of scale it, right? You don't need EXP for that. You don't need experience for that. You don't need levels for that. You could just have a flat system that does that. And that also makes it so that you don't have the fake thing of, well, I'm level 5 and that thing's level 25, and if I stab it with my, or swing my sword at it, it only does 1 point of damage. You don't have that either, right? Like maybe your sword always does 20 damage, and maybe it's got, I don't know, 500 health, right? So you going in there as a level 1 and doing 20 damage on every single swing is going to take a while, but you could still kill the enemy if you're good enough and you don't get hit. That's my thought behind it. So the things to make you stronger are absolutely beneficial, but if you wanted the challenge of not doing that, you could also do that. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's how we're going to section it out, right? Is we adjust what the mobs in that area have and do, as well as probably environmental hazards as well. There'll be traps to fall into, and harder areas will have more traps and things that can kill you. That kind of thing. Metroid has no XP levels, but has meaningful progression and keys locks. Yeah, we'll have some of that stuff too, for sure. Hope you aren't feeling all scatterbrained with all these recommendations. No, actually, it's really great. I'm quite enjoying this. If you want, I can send you some design resources I still have for my degree. Things like design pillars, player-facing information, mapping out your capacity. Yeah, sure. I'll take any of that stuff if you don't mind. Hit me up on Discord. If you ping me on there, it may take me a bit to respond, but yeah, I'll answer. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Let's see. Some people like milestone XP instead of enemy reward XP. Yeah. So that's the thing, is I would have to find some way to milestone it, right? If you're not getting that level celebration, there's got to be something to replace that with. But I am thinking that we can dispense with EXP, we can dispense with levels, right? EXP is a useful indicator to how close to getting more stronger you are. Yeah, but if we dispense with the idea that you have to be a certain strength to kill an enemy, right? And replace that with, you either need this amount of strength or you need to be really good, then that changes up things entirely. Maybe we make this so that you can progress the entire game as a level 1 if you want, as long as you're able to, avoid getting hit at all in the end game stuff, right? Maybe that's the way we go. I think that would be more interesting than an EXP system for sure. I agree the flat thing's easier. I guess I'm just pointing out, to me, it's the same outcome as having EXP and levels. Some content is not able to be completed without having better gear. If you don't have dodges, rolls, etc., what does it mean to take the challenge? Love this discussion, by the way. Thought of this sort of stuff a lot myself. Yeah, so I've done a lot of thinking about this over the years too. And that's the thing, right? Like, so the gear would make, getting better gear would make things a lot easier, right? But like, I also believe something that's never made sense to me is a lot of these games, if you are, I don't know, level 50, right? And you're fighting something that's level 40, but you take off all your armor and use no weapons, you just punch in the thing, right? It can still kill you, right? So like, what do levels really do? But like, if you're fighting something that's level 30, right? A lot of games kind of cap, like if your level is split out too much, then you just don't do damage and you just stand there and miss. Which, like, if we're fighting face to face and I'm trying to punch you in the face, just because I have less experience doesn't mean that, like, I'm going to miss you every single time. You know what I mean? And so that I've always thought that was a little bit silly. Like maybe I should, not do as much damage as I would if I had really good gear and really good weapons, right? But you should still be able to technically do it, even if it'll take a while. Will the game support dancing pad as input? If it does, I'm sure I could probably get Miss Mika to play it. Sounds more skill based and less Diablo like, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards, right? Please don't add dodge roll. Why would I not do that? Would be the question. What is the case against it? David DGD, first time chatter, welcome. Blasphemy. Yeah, I mean, I know there's going to be, mixed opinions on this for sure. Monster Hunter does it that way. No XP, but get better gear to conquer more. Yeah. Monster Hunter progression is locked behind levels, so you need EXP. Yeah, I don't want that necessarily. Levels are more like an extra gate. It's not super needed. Yeah. You find frame gameplay boring. So maybe we find a way to compromise, right? Because I'm sure that there are going to be people that don't like that style of play as well. So maybe we figure something out that's better. Okay, let me check on YouTube messages. Also, is this real-time battles? Yes, it's not going to be turn-based. Because then you can also change speed of enemy attacks and change difficulty more than just damage buffs. Yes, that's true too. And buffs and debuffs can do that as well. What about the Skyrim system where you build up skill trees? Maybe not missing punches like in Morrowind, though. Yeah, so skill trees are going to be a thing. We have that in here. That's definitely going to be a thing that you can invest into to unlock various powers and things. But I'm of the mindset that you shouldn't have to do that stuff to get all the way to the end. Invincibility frames. Yeah. So, yeah, iframes. Yeah. I've always kind of disagreed with that too, to be honest. Like, Elden Ring is always the example I use for that too. So the problem that I have with that is, like, if the boss is like swinging around a sword, violently in all directions, and you are not taking damage because you happen to roll at the right time, but like the sword is still visually like going through your character, like that's dumb. Or if, a giant is stamping his foot down right next to you and all the ground is, flying up in the air, but you don't get damage because you're rolling at that time. That just doesn't work for me either. So yeah, I agree with you there. Batman does the idea of rock, paper, scissors. Taser Goon needs cape stun. Brutes need dodged. Shield Goons needs jumped over. Yeah, see, that would be a little bit more balanced, something like that. Let me put that in here as an idea, actually. Let's see, where did we have? Didn't we have a combat section? I thought. Guess not. I thought I did. This is controls combat, but all right. It's just all of this, I guess. So, rock, paper, scissors. So one attack requires maybe jump. One requires roll. One requires block, etc. And then I agree with this. No, invincible frame. So like in the example of like when a so for example, rolling while a giant stamps the ground next to you, causing the ground to quake and stuff to fly, does not avoid damage. Because I do agree that's a good point for sure. I don't get why people say Dark Souls is hard. Just press the invisibility button. Yeah. I'm crap at them, if I'm honest myself. I'm no good at them, but maybe if I design something like that, maybe I will be. It's a skill issue for sure. You just described Superman jump on Monster Hunter. Thank you for the stretch redeem. Don't even use shield, two-handed katana, run around, then roll if you can't run out of the way quick enough. Yeah. So like if you're about to be hit by an area of effect spell or attack or whatever, like the only way that you can avoid it is to be out of that circle or whatever, you know. Get very vulnerable while healing. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, this is super random. Just here to say that I have extreme respect for anyone who makes their own game engine. I spent the better half of 2 entire months getting my render graph implementation to work. Honestly, you're an inspiration for me. I appreciate the kind words. We're far from done, but we've done a lot of work here, and I'm glad that it's useful and inspiring. So thank you very much for the kind words. Really appreciate that. Switch weapon types for enemy types. Spear enemies are weaker to closer range. So that is one thing that's another example of like how skill trees can come to account, right? Maybe you get really skilled up with swords, but you suck with spears. That would make certain fights harder, right? Because you can't block parry. You need to actually reach the stem to heal yourself up. Yeah. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Appreciate that. Let's see. I think having the nude level 1 dude being able to beat everything will limit a lot of the design. So you should think more if you really want that. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? If it's possible, it should be damn near impossible, but not completely impossible, right? And honestly, I don't know how I would find somebody good enough to be able to even test that in theory, because it wouldn't be me. So, yeah. Yeah. Interesting point, for sure. Let's see. EXP does mean experience, though. It's trying to emulate skill over time. If you have a dynamic and well-made fighting system, you can nix XP and the player will be gaining skill. Be the one gaining skill, actually. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. We are going to need a way to... I think the way to assist with that is if the player is not able to develop that skill as quickly, then they can compensate for that by getting better armor, better weapons. That makes all of those things easier. So they don't die if they get hit 2 or 3 times. You know, they die if they get hit 10 times or something like that because they've got really good armor. Let's see. And I just noticed what time it is. So unfortunately, we are going to have to pick this up tomorrow in the next stream. But I'll finish reading the messages that are up right now. And then we'll look for somebody to raid. Could you explain how you'd make an event system for an engine, specifically how a class would get a reference to it and subscribe to events, event listener interface, event dispatching singleton? So we actually have an event system in the engine already that you can go and look at. So I will drop a link in chat. Well, it dropped on the Twitch side. I'm waiting for it to show up. There it is. So yeah, if you check out that link to kohiengine.com and you go to the GitHub, If you go here, our event system is in Kohi core. Or did I put it in runtime? Actually, I think I put it in runtime. Kohi runtime. And then source. And then core. And event right here. So event H and event C are what you're going to want to look at. And this has comments and everything in terms of how to actually use it. We have an initialize, a shutdown, a register for events, unregister, and then an event fire. Each event has a code, a sender, a listener, and an event context. And then the event context looks like this, where you can just send a specific type of data, whether it be an array of different size ints, or a pointer to something, or a string, what have you. This all is unioned up. And then we also have our event codes are, we have enumerations for it that define some codes here, but you could just pass a number if you wanted to instead. So U16, right? And so if you take a look at this and the actual implementation of it, there's not very much to it. It uses a ring queue internally to handle the various event queues, and that's about it. All right. Taman actually just linked the event system video. Awesome. I'm going to copy that and put it over on the YouTube side. Thank you, sir. There's the video on it. Okay. Let me see. Early areas could be made easy. Be a more simple mix of enemy types. More mix of enemies as the game goes on. Absolutely, yeah. As the game code gets the gameplay code written in C as well. Yes, it will be. We're not going to have any scripting for this. The level 1 thing sounds kind of like one of those things that goes viral on YouTube's after a few years of the game. To be honest, that sounds like a good thing. That's kind of what I'm hoping. All right. That about does it for tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and find somebody to raid. Let's see. See if I can find something that is relatively related to what we're doing. Doesn't look like there's much in terms of... Well, it's taking forever to refresh for one thing. Okay. I'm just trying to find somebody to raid here that looks like they're doing something similar to what we're doing. I don't know if I'm going to find it tonight, though. I don't think so. Okay. I think what we might do... do you use C99? I'm using technically C17, which is just, C11 with bug fixes. I do plan on actually moving it back to C99 sometime soon. All right, we are going to raid... We're going to raid Hypnotic Games. He's making a game in Godot. Or Godot, depending on how you pronounce it. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and raid his channel, ask him what he's up to. And yeah, that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate a follow either on the Twitch side or... on the YouTube side, or if you're so inclined, both. And
yeah, we will take a look at this further tomorrow night. So I will see you guys then. Peace.